Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Mean Gene. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, the abandoned ship alarm. And if we all sink, we'll see you at the port in San Fran.
All right. Thank you, Mean Gene.
Thank you very much, Mean Gene, and welcome to Beach Talk Radio, everybody. It is episode number 33. My name is Ed Ryan, along with the lovely wife, Kim Ryan, sporting a nice new pair of sunglasses. Yes. We are live on Fort Myers Beach at Peach Time Out. It's a lovely day. It's going to be 80 degrees. It's a lovely crowd already. And we want you to come.
The sun is definitely out today.
We want you to come on down and join us. You can catch the show on Facebook, or you can listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, the Beach Talk Radio app, Pocket Cast, or the Spreaker app. We're everywhere except for the regular radio. We're everywhere.
We are everywhere.
Everybody listens to audio on their phone now anyway. A
lot of podcasting going on these days, a lot of listening. There's a lot of good content out there.
All right, and we're also, you throw me off base. I got this intro ready to roll. A video of all our shows are archived on Facebook and the YouTube, everybody. You can also catch all the archived audio on our website, beachtalkradio.com. And, of course, you can always feel free to support the show by hitting the support button and bling-blinging us a little money on the PayPal.
You're like yelling in my ear this
morning.
Sorry,
dear. I am so sorry. All right, we have lots to talk about today. We have a lot of activity going on this week. We had a special episode that was posted yesterday, audio only, with the pastor from the Beach Baptist Church. Pastor Sean was on, and this coming week we're going to have another special episode about the safety on the beach. A lot of stuff going on. The council meeting is Monday, and we're going to be covering that. So, and we had a lot going on here just 15 minutes before the show that was a little bit crazy that we're going to tell you about in the last 10 minutes of the show. So stick around for the last 10 minutes, everybody, because it's going to be fun and exciting. We have two great guests coming up. In the second half of the show, we have, Dan Andres coming on. He's going to be on the second half, around 9:30. He's the owner of Mango Street Inn and a former city council member. So we're going to be talking to Dan. But right now, Kim's going to take over for a little bit. She's going to talk to Bill Mitsch, Dr. Bill from FGCU. We're going to talk a little water quality, and this is going to be fun.
And we're going to talk that it is World Wetland Day. So before we get started, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. This is a pleasure.
Well,
two things I love: being on the beach and being on the radio and talking science.
Well, let me clue the folks in on all of your wonderful accolades. So you has been eminent scholar and director of the Everglades Wetland Research Park and the Sproul Chair for Southwest Florida Habitat Restoration and Management at FGCU since 2012. You were a professor. You are a professor emeritus at the Ohio State University, and you have your friend from Ohio State University joining us today too.
Yes,
where you taught for 26 years. You hold many courteous and honorary faculty appointments to include the University of South Florida, the University of Florida, and the University of Notre Dame, to name a few. I know there were more. You've done a lot of research, and teaching has been focused on wetland ecology and biogeochemistry.
Biogeochemistry.
Thank you. Wetland creation and engineering. You've had over 600 publications, it said in your bio, to include reports, abstracts, and books, and you've advised 77 graduate students. Yes, that probably was the hardest thing.
It's up to 79, but that's my crowning achievement. The students are the next generation.
Well, that's awesome. So we are here to talk about, I know you wanted to mention it's World Wetland Day, so can you tell us a little, let's get started with that.
Well, first of all, February 2nd is three things in one. First of all, most important to me, it's my youngest daughter's birthday, Mary Cecilia. Happy birthday. She should be listening. Then secondly, it's Groundhog Day for the poor people up north that have to have 6 more weeks of winter. And then most important to my profession, February 2nd, for some reason, is
they had to pick a day.
Is World Wetland Day. And it's been that for many, many years, but it's something that we usually try to celebrate. So this talk show is my celebration.
Well, good. Well, what can you tell us about the wetlands in South Florida?
Well, we're losing them. I
Okay.
mean, we still have a lot of wetlands left in Florida, obviously, because we have the Everglades, but we're just it's getting chipped away. But on a global scale, if I can start there, we've lost like 80% of the wetlands of the world. And when we lose those, we've lost our it's like losing our kidneys. So no wonder water quality problems are so bad when we're running on dialysis. We don't have any of our kidneys anymore. So that's the theme that I will talk about a lot if I have the chance of. We need to bring back our wetlands to save the Everglades, to save our coastlines, to save everything.
So they really act as the filtration for the water.
Right.
For all of the stuff that gets dumped either through pesticides or...
Well, we don't like to put pesticides in wetlands. That's poison.
Right.
But the nutrients, the nitrogen and phosphorus that are causing the red tide and the blue-green algae, yes, wetlands, perfect sink for those before they become toxic.
So talk to us a little bit about the differences and or similarities between red tide and blue-green algae.
Well, red tide, or let's start with blue-green algae because it's easier. Blue-green algae is usually limited by phosphorus. That's a nutrient. That's what we put on the farm fields for fertilizer. You know, in freshwater areas, that's what we had here. We had freshwater algal blooms last spring and last summer. I was interviewed on the radio every other day about freshwater. Nobody was even thinking about coastal and red tide. Then about end of July, early August, the red tide exploded, and then we were being interviewed, and actually we were out on a boat studying the red tide in early August. That's caused by probably, and I'm going to say, scientists always have to say probably nitrogen.
Okay.
So nitrogen is the other fertilizer that we put on the land for crops. So if you don't have to remember all 122 elements on the periodic table that bored you when you were in chemistry class, there's only two elements you got to remember: nitrogen and phosphorus. Phosphorus, freshwater; nitrogen, saltwater, such as red tide. And you know, if there are exceptions to that, there might be, but basically you can take that to the bank that's usually what's going on.
So those two elements create the red tide one and blue-green algae. Now, how do they get into our water system in the first place?
Well, clearly in the coastal system, the Caloosahatchee is bringing both of them down from the Lake Okeechobee in vast quantities, especially when they release water from the lake, which is almost becoming routine every year. So that's the conduit, and ironically, the freshwater bloom the freshwater blooms will occur in the river and the backwaters, and that's what a lot of people really dislike. But when it gets out to the coastline, if it gets out to really deep salt water, it's got the red tide algae requires about 25 parts per billion parts per thousand of salinity. So it's got to be pretty salty to be red tide. And then that nitrogen takes over and
that creates that.
Well, it doesn't create it. It's there's a lot of debate about that. Red tide has occurred for
It's naturally occurring, and then it gets exacerbated by
it gets a booster shot from all these fertilizers that are charging it up. That's why we get these explosive red tides that we had last summer.
And now the water at Lake Okeechobee, how is it that there's so many frequent releases?
Well, they release the water and send it down our way. It's supposed to go south. That's the first point. The first point is that the water in the Everglades is supposed to go all the way from Disney World, basically, down the Kissimmee River, into the lake, overspill the lake, go south into the Everglades. That's how it always worked.
And in the Everglades, that sawgrass helps to filter out all of that.
Right, but we don't even want the sawgrass to see the high nutrients, because if it gets high in the sawgrass, it's going to change to a totally different wetland.
Okay.
It will probably be a cattail wetland. And there was fear of that 20 years ago, and that's when they decided that they don't want any phosphorus to go to the Everglades. Otherwise, it will get trashed. And that's the fear I still have. We have this dilemma right now. We're being asked, what do you want? Do you want the water in your coastline and red tide, or do you want the water in the Everglades and trash the Everglades? That's a choice we're given right now.
Who's giving us that choice?
The state.
Okay.
And they do have a plan to deal with the excess going down the Everglades in quantity. They're proposing in the next 10 years, though, not now, a big reservoir. But that's for storing water only. And that really, I'm sad to say that the plan they have for cleaning up the water is very, very inadequate.
And what is that plan as it stands now?
Well, they were going to build 6,000 acres of wetlands to treat them, and I think we need something on the order of 100,000 acres. So it's all about land. We got to get that big swath of additional wetlands to make sure that the Everglades is going to be protected.
And then would that be does that include the stormwater treatment areas?
Well, these would be more stormwater treatment areas.
Okay.
And those stormwater treatment areas, that's what their lawyers say we have to call them. We're not allowed to call them wetlands, which is a bunch of baloney. I know wetlands, and I know that those are man-made wetlands, but nevertheless wetlands, and they should be called as such, especially on World Wetland Day, for goodness sakes.
Give them back their name.
Yeah.
So how did all of this originally get started? How did the change of the ecology get started?
Well, I think in the 1920s, when there were some hurricanes that came through and caused some serious damage to, a lot of people were killed, but also farms were wiped out. Somebody came up with the idea of putting a big, gigantic dam on the south edge of Lake Okeechobee.
Okay.
To forever protect everything south of there, even though this pulsing of hurricane water or wet season water was totally natural.
Right. Okay.
Totally natural.
So that dam interrupted the natural flow of water through the Everglades.
Right.
Okay. And then what happened?
Well, and then they ran into a big problem when Disneyland and all the development occurred up on the Kissimmee, north of the Kissimmee River, and there's 10 times more water. I don't know that's 10 times, but a lot more water.
Right.
Coming south to the lake, and they couldn't deal with it, and there was too much. And then they started talking about the safety of the dam, and then it could only be up to 14 feet, and then they had to release it. By safety reasons, they have to release it east and west to us or to the Atlantic Ocean. And so that's been the policy for many years.
So the dam at first was to protect people, and then
Right.
it dried out the area so people were able to develop that area,
Right.
which then created all this excess water, including water that we get from storms and
Right. It's a massive amount of quantity. Like in 2016, I can remember the number. There was about 3 billion
with a B
cubic yards of water dumped either to the Atlantic Ocean or to the Gulf of Mexico. Gigantic amount of waste of fresh water, first of all.
Right.
That's fresh water. That's not salt water. And secondly, of course, it comes with a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus from farmlands and whatever. And so that's what's that's what caused all the pollution we had down here. We got 2 types last year.
Right. And how did the lake originally get all of that pollution in it?
Well, it's a shallow lake to begin with.
Okay.
So you add nutrients, and Mother Nature says, I think I'd like to change Lake Okeechobee into a wetland. So that's what she's trying to do. Fill it up, and then it'll be probably a pretty little wetland, but it'll always have lots of nutrients in it because they've been dumped in there for 100 years now. So we really have created a monster, if you will. The lake is now considered to be a source of pollution alone. Okay. Even if you cut off the flow from up Orlando way, you're still going to have a massive amount of nutrients coming out of the lake for hundreds of years.
So there's really no plan to sort of clean up the lake or prevent bad water going in.
It's the 3rd largest lake in the United States of America, and when people start talking about dredging it, we're talking about trillions of dollars probably.
So the plan as it stands now is to build that reservoir, which is going to be huge.
Yes, 10,000 acres in size.
Oof.
And it's going to be 30 miles south of the lake, but they're going to be filling it with Lake Okeechobee water,
right?
Either directly or indirectly. So guess what we're going to get? We're going to get a second Lake Okeechobee. It's going to behave the same as the first one.
Now, in what part? I mean, because there's a lot of people that are pointing fingers all over the place, and one of the fingers gets pointed at U.S. Sugar, and then they like to point fingers back Okay, well then now Ed is adding to your fashion statement that you're making today.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
To bring a little levity to the water quality issue. So anyways, so there's a lot of finger pointing back and forth with U.S. Sugar. Can you explain or put a little light on that?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
U.S. Sugar has caused a lot of pollution. Let's start with that premise.
Okay.
But and they're in the Everglades agriculture area, which is south
Right.
of the lake. That's why we're sending the water here, because we don't want to flood Clewiston, but we also don't want to flood their sugar fields. And by the way, the water is sent down to us by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
And it's gravity flow, so it's easy. But so the pollution from the sugar mostly goes south, and it was very nice that we, the taxpayers of Florida and taxpayers of the United States of America, spent $2 billion, not million, $2 billion to create about 60,000 acres of treatment wetlands that we weren't supposed to call wetlands, even on a wetland day.
Right.
They call them SDAs, and they work. And so you're welcome, Sugar, for us, we taxpayers, cleaning up your mess.
So they dump the bad water
south.
The state, right? Because I know a statement that they made was that, we're not messing up Lake Okeechobee because we're south. We can't shoot flow water up.
Well, they actually do. There's a
little bit,
yeah,
right?
A little
tiny bit.
Well, we found the little tiny bit was equivalent to 60%
Right.
more water than comes from the wastewater treatment plants of Fort Myers. So it's not trivial.
No. But to them, that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And so now the taxpayers have paid to treat their dirty water.
Right.
And so that would be nice of them to maybe either treat their own water or at least sell
give us
some
100,000 acres
Acres.
we need to make sure this new EAA project works and sends clean water, not dirty water, to the Everglades. Yes. They should be happy to give us that land. The EAA area, is, by the way, is 700,000 acres. So we're asking for 1/7 of the land so that everybody's happy. They will say, well, we didn't cause the water from Lake Okeechobee. And that's true. They didn't.
Right.
But they sure got a freebie from us from the billions of dollars we spent on the wetlands that are cleaning up their wastewater.
Now it looks like historically there was a deal that was brokered or tried to be brokered between the U.S. government and U.S. Sugar.
Yes.
To buy 180,000 acres.
Well, we could use that
at a big amount, and they kept downsizing, and then South Florida Water Management District said, "Nah, we're not doing it."
Right.
And so.
And that was in the last couple of years they did that.
Right.
Yes.
So now there was an attempt, but it didn't make it over the line to get that land.
No, in South Florida Water Management District, I used to love that organization. I worked for them occasionally on little projects.
I served that right up for you there.
Yeah. and they were the good guys. But I'm telling you, in the last 6 years, they almost turned into they make the Army Corps of Engineers looks great compared to them now.
Okay.
So they don't care about the people of the state of Florida. They care about their own vested interests, and that's why the whole board got fired, because they were just worried about agricultural production and very little else. So hopefully we'll have a new day for the South Florida Water District if they get new governorship in there.
Now, are there any other ideas that you could propose in addition to the reservoir and the additional land for, to get us some new kidneys? Are there other things people can do, organizations can do, agricultural companies can do?
Well, I think we have to, here's the problem. There's 5 or 6 things that probably are causing red tide, 5 or 6. We don't have the time to do an experiment where we take one out at a time.
Okay.
And if you do it, it'll just take forever. So I think we have to attack anything that's a logical problem. And the most logical sources of nitrogen to the Gulf of Mexico now, one is agricultural runoff, agricultural fertilizer, wherever it comes from, down the Caloosahatchee or wherever.
Okay.
The second, interestingly, is septic tanks, especially if we have septic tanks on coastal counties like Lee County, like Collier County. They should be outlawed, just flat out outlawed. we're the beaches.
Take that someplace else.
Yes. Well, no, you'd have to. The homes would have to switch over to a centralized wastewater treatment plant, which they should anyhow.
Are there enough wastewater treatment plants now to
Oh,
deal
yeah.
with that? Okay.
Yeah, and even if there aren't, that's a better way of treating.
Even if there aren't, we're going to build some.
Well, yeah, build some, and they can put in what they call tertiary treatment, which will not only take out the normal pollutants that we do with treatment plant, they would also take out nitrogen and phosphorus.
Okay.
So that needs to be centralized. Everybody can't have a little tertiary treatment plant next to their house, and that's essentially what we're doing now. Everybody has a little treatment plant, and they call them septic tanks. And they're overloaded in most cases. They saturate the entire landscape. They used to always say the grass is always greener around a septic tank, and that's true because the nutrients are leaking out. So that's another thing we can attack. And the third thing that I got quoted for a couple weeks ago after I gave a presentation at my lab was we were startled when we measured the nitrates in rainfall. Now, it wasn't our original intent to look at rainfall, but I said, oh, my God, if those numbers are right, and by the way, we only have a few numbers, so I don't want to set the alarm bell yet, then we got to start looking at the automobile because the automobile exhaust creates nitrous oxides. They get up in the atmosphere. And then
it comes down.
Well, they get converted to nitrate, the exact chemical that's causing trouble, and it rains down. So
what goes up comes down.
Absolutely. And that could be part of the problem. And by the way, when people say, well, it's natural, it's always happened. Yes, there's always been a little bit of nitrate in rainfall during lightning storms, especially. Scientists have discovered when there's a lightning storm, and Lord knows we have those.
Get rid of those.
The two gases up there, everybody can't see me pointing up. The two gases most prominent up there are nitrogen, 80%, and oxygen, 20%. And the lightning storm is so powerful, it fuses them together. This is Chemistry 101, and makes nitrate. So we don't even need automobiles to cause that. But the internal combustion engine does essentially the same thing. It combines those two gases that are independent, calls it nitrate, and then it's a problem. So it's not surprising we've had red tide all along because it's coming out of the sky.
So I'm going to ask a question. As far as the fertilizers that are used, can there not be fertilizers developed that don't create such havoc, or is that completely ludicrous?
No, I mean, really, fertilization amounts they're adding on the landscape, that's almost a sacred thing that agriculture is not going to touch because they're going for maximum power, maximum productivity, not optimum power, not save the planet power. They're going for the most crops they can get and always will. And fertilizer is the variable they can control.
And it just isn't cost effective for them to develop fertilizer that would be powerful but not damaging.
Well, there's all sorts of fertilizer called slow release where you put it on the land and it doesn't leach into the soil right away. And there's, there's
a couple options.
Those help, maybe 10%.
Okay.
But the 90% still gets through. It just so happens that nitrate, that's what we've been talking about, that form of nitrogen is very soluble in soil. So once it gets dissolved in the water, man, it's gone. It goes out the drainage systems. It goes through sand like there's no tomorrow because sand is very porous. And that's seeping into our coastal areas as well.
Now, what is your prediction for this year coming up as far as what we might see for red tide or blue-green algae?
I've been asked that a lot recently.
Can you bring out a crystal ball? Well, I was reading something about an El Nino.
Yes.
So there's that to consider.
Well, we just had a big rainstorms yesterday, right? And we've had 2 or 3 more. This reminds me a lot of 2016.
Oh, boy.
When we had a lot of rain in January, and that's what started all the last 3 years of hellish water quality problems on the coast because they had to release so much water. I don't know what the situation is now, but Lake Okeechobee's just gotten a lot of rain recently, and we'll just have to see if it's getting up to a dangerous level where they have to release. So that's one thing.
Okay.
I think they're keeping a better eye on it, and I think they're very, very conscious now, they being the Army Corps, of the PR consequences of these releases. So maybe they'll hold it back a little bit. Maybe they planned ahead. Hopefully we won't get big releases but whether we do or not, the El Nino, we got to keep an eye on that.
Okay.
If there's a lot of rain, if we start seeing a lot of rain in the dry season, our dry season goes through April. if we start seeing a lot of rain instead of like we did last night, I think we had rain up here. I certainly did down in Naples.
Yeah.
Then we better be cautious. But I'll tell you, we have no model for predicting red tide.
Right.
We're actually at the bottom of the curve, if you will, of algae growth
Right now.
down here. It's usually a month after theoretically, the lowest temperature in the air is a month after the December 22nd solstice.
You're like an almanac over here.
No, it's true. That's about the lowest temperature. And lowest temperature in water might be delayed another couple weeks from that. So let's just, for sake of saying, World Wetland Day is probably the lowest water temperature, and therefore the lowest potential for algal blooms. So from now on,
it's going only up from here.
It's only up from here.
And then we got to watch for the problems.
Well, yeah, and there'll be some signs, but we'll keep an eye on signs. But there's really no model. Nobody has been able to predict red tides coming until it almost
is here.
Is there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You're a wealth of information. I think we just really scratched the proverbial surface of the topic, and so we would love to have you come back and give us another lesson.
Okay, I'd be delighted to.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it very much. All right. Did you say proverbial surface? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
The surface.
Proverbial surface.
Well, it's a euphemism. Scratching the surface.
Euphemism and proverbial.
Oh,
I'm back on now. Keep it at my level, please. Thank you very much.
You know
Dr. Bill was great. Actually sat out in front of the Starbucks in Coconut Point with a good doctor, and we spoke for about an hour. I do have that interview on tape, and he went into a lot of detail about everything that was going on. And he went into a lot of detail about how happy he was that the governor fired everybody that's on the Southwest Florida management.
You wanted me to bring that up.
You know, I'm all about the politics.
Listen,
I love the politics.
He was getting a sign from his friend when he started on that subject.
On the politics?
Yes.
Oh, stop.
Well,
that's a big deal. The governor, this new governor here is
maybe you could get him on the show.
That'd be nice. I'm working on things. I have a real job too, by the way.
Please.
This is a hobby. This is a side hustle, as they say in the podcasting business.
I said that to somebody the other day, and they're like, I'm not familiar with that term.
The side hustle?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not familiar with the term gap year either, but that's something that you constantly spoke about last weekend when we were hanging out in the back. But we'll get to that later in the hour.
All right.
We have our second guest ready to join us right now,
right.
Dan Andre, a big, he's got a fan base here.
He's got a
Dan
big
brought
group
down
of
a whole
folks
clan
here
of
today.
people. Look,
Have a
listen
seat
to that.
there.
Listen to that. He's got a gigantic fan base down here. Dan Andre, welcome to the show, Dan. Your first appearance. How are you? Oh, we're shaking hands. Yeah, there we go. Very nice. Very nice.
It's great. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, first of all, Dan, you own the Mango Street Inn. Tell us about the Mango Street Inn.
We're starting our 11th season. It's a little bed and breakfast, and it was a former crack house on Mango Street, and we converted it into one of the top, I think, lodging spots on Fort Myers Beach.
How tough is it to convert a crack house to a bed and breakfast where people like to go to? I didn't know it was a crack house.
It was. It's about 6 months.
That's it?
Yeah.
So, okay, all right. That's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
so how many units do you have?
We have 6 units.
6 units. And you brought everybody that is now staying there to Pete's Time Out today for breakfast.
That is correct. And we all jumped on the tram.
Nice.
Nice little free ride. Great addition to Fort Myers Beach. And they dropped us off here, and it was perfect.
Now, your location is down by Heavenly Biscuit, correct?
That is correct.
So how far down on the beach is it? And it's on the bay side, not the beach side, correct?
That's correct. And we're just 2 doors away from the Heavenly Biscuit, and from the bridge, probably half a mile.
Awesome. So the first question I have for you is, on the heels of Dr. Bill, the red tide issue that we had last year, did it have any impact on your business?
It had a tremendous impact. We lost all of August, September, and October business.
No kidding.
Yep.
How do you make that up?
You don't.
Right. So things are picking up now. Season is in full swing, and it looks like once the weather turns, people are coming no matter what.
We were all back. In fact, in October, my wife said, look, our November reservations are ahead of last year, and we're good to go. So,
awesome. So in addition to you being a business owner on the beach, you also were a council member.
I was.
Why would a business owner want to run for public office? I mean, why did you decide to run?
It's actually started earlier than that. When we first moved here, there was no recycling on the beach, and so I got involved with the Marine Resources Task Force as an advisory committee to the council, and it took me about a year and a half, and we finally got recycling on beach accesses. And just a little factoid on that is they say if you can reduce your solid waste program by 20%, then it's considered a very successful recycling program.
Okay.
We reduced solid waste on the beach by 47%.
Nice.
And from there, then it was the local planning agency, and then it's like, we'll just keep going.
I mean, most of us have been recycling for 10, 20 years. I mean, why wasn't the beach recycling?
I have no clue. I mean, I have no clue. I mean, they had it, in the neighborhoods through, at the time, Veolia, but there wasn't any on the beach. So we changed it, and we have it.
So you ran in what year?
Oh, I have no idea.
So, but you were 2012, your wife is saying.
I was actually appointed.
Oh, you were appointed?
When Larry Cocker ran for county commissioner, left a vacancy, and then I was appointed by the 4 remaining council members to serve out the remainder of his term. And then I was reelected again for a second term.
So you were on for about 3 years.
I was.
Okay. So what was it like being on this council down here?
It was great. It was great. We had some very smart people, very compassionate. We all got along.
Who was on the council with you?
Joe Kaczynski, Bob Raymond, Alan Mandel, myself, and Joe List.
Okay. And now when you're coming up for re-election, the whole TPI thing starts, right? And it starts as a grand castle.
That's correct.
It's and the community's going crazy.
That's correct.
So talk about that.
I probably lost my re-election because I supported it, but I didn't support the grand thing. I said there's an answer somewhere in the middle. I ran as the voice of reason. That we got to find a middle ground here, and I think we could. But obviously those that were for any kind of development did not win in the election.
So that's when Tracy Gore got elected and Dennis Bobak got elected. They were running against TPI.
That's correct.
So in those years, things have been scaled down where it seems like the community, the majority of the community, I don't know, I'm guessing, I really don't know that, but the majority of the community seems to be in favor at this point. Would you say that's the case? I
would say that's the case. I think there's a very small percentage of the people that are against it, and they're in, a select neighborhood. But
what select neighborhood is that?
The one closest to the project.
Okay. Now, what did you think when you saw Tracy Gore and Dennis Bobak at the Whale, and that was all caught on tape?
Very disturbing. I think it was inappropriate. Alan Mandel, when he was mayor and I was vice mayor, we still are very close friends. And we would go out and have drinks together, but we knew that we couldn't discuss anything that we might ever have to vote on again. And the policy and procedures manuals for the town of Fort Myers Beach specifically talks about that and says if you're a council member and you do that, you can be recalled.
Were you surprised that you didn't win?
Yes, I was.
Why?
Because everybody else said that they thought everybody was up for, because Alan Mandel had termed out.
Yeah.
That everybody was running for one spot other than mine.
What do you think about how the council's performed in the last couple of years since you've been off?
A little bit anti-business.
A little bit? Come on. A little bit?
Okay. I mean, and this wasn't a council decision, which I think it should have been, but when you went from what we had termed as the beach enforcement as ambassadors, and we had shirts that said ambassadors, and we taught them about rack lines and how to explain to tourists that why don't we rake our beaches? Because we're a migratory bird area, and this rack line feeds these birds and gives them the energy to migrate. And they thought that was so cool. And then all of a sudden, they're in black shirts with enforcement on the back, and that was
antagonistic.
Yeah, and it was a management decision. But to me, if you're going to change the image of the island, that's a policy decision, and that's what the council's job is to do. So I think some of this is reckless.
aside from that, do you think that some people on this council or some people that are in the government here go after local businesses for revenge reasons or for other reasons where instead of being helpful, they'd rather write violations, or they'd rather write code violations, or they'd rather...
Yeah, I would say right now I would say that it's more complaint driven. And
why is that? Why are they doing that?
Well, I open myself up to it, don't I?
You open yourself? How? By running a business?
No, I mean, how critical do you get before, they start looking at you? And I mean, we're legit. I mean, you can come look at my place all you want. But it just seems, talking to other business people, that it's not as conducive to friendly business as it used to be.
How important is this election to the local residents, to this beach? Biggest ever?
Probably. With the amount of money that Tom Torgerson wants to invest in sort of these rundown properties, as far as changing the island and cleaning it up, yeah, I think it's huge.
Who are the best candidates running right now?
I would say Ray Murphy and Rexanne.
Okay. What?
Only because I like Dan a lot.
Yeah.
I think he needs a little more experience.
Okay. What do you think about the job Dennis Boback has done? We're being honest here, just between us.
No, let's be honest. One of the things that he called me out on in the forums when we were running for election was the fact that we brought beach enforcement and we brought the beach water in-house because it saved us about $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
And he challenged me on that, and I could never get the finance office to provide me those documents, even though that was true. And obviously, he was wrong because they're still there. And I always said government smart, not government light. But, we saved a lot of money for the town.
So when people go and vote in March, the dilemma that I see is that we have 3 good candidates and we have 1 candidate that's not good. That's just my opinion. Now, if he's got a big following and you have 3 candidates that have a decent following, his people are going to go in and just vote for him. And then the 3 candidates that you have on this side are going to dilute the vote where they could push him over the finish line again.
That's true.
So what do you think the right thing to do is?
I think to educate yourself on the candidates, listen to the forums, go to the whatever meetings, ask them questions. And you understand that only like 16.7% of the people on this island that own property can vote. So it's a really small number of votes that you need to win. So yeah, if he can consolidate his group.
Well, what I heard was there's 5,000 registered voters or around that number. There's 5,000 people that vote.
Okay.
And they said 56% of the population or the eligible voters voted in the last election, and they thought that was good.
Right.
How could that be good? That's not good.
No, it's not good.
90% is good.
I think 100% would be good.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're eligible, your wife is passing you letters here, notes here. So just if you're so go ahead.
No, I think do your homework as far as the candidates go. Mr. Conandaris wrote a letter and, misrepresented. The town gave $80 million in incentives.
He didn't write a letter. He wrote an advertisement that the newspaper, not the Island Sandpaper, that the Observer made it look like was a letter, and it was actual ad. They didn't. Right. I know what you're talking about, right. And that was BS to begin with. But
right, I mean, just say, okay, the town gave him $80 million in incentives for Torgerson to build his property. The town hasn't given him a penny.
Where did he come up with that number?
You got me.
So on that subject of Mr. Torgerson and Condaris, you believe he's behind the lawsuit?
Yes.
And why do you think he's doing that?
I think that there's actually a group. If you remember the last election, that was the Pink Shell, Best Western, Diamond Head, and Wyndham that were all funding the ads against TPI.
When it was the castle.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it's a competition issue.
Is as far as you know, is Condieras and the paper patent people, are they the only ones against this project, or is there a bigger group that we haven't heard of or haven't heard from?
I think right now it's just those.
Yeah. So how do you see this thing playing out? What's going to happen?
My particular feeling is if I was a judge and I saw the tapes of Whalegate,
I love that.
That I would just throw this out immediately. It's like, okay, this is not a really lawsuit. I mean, how can you defend a lawsuit where you're talking about to the plaintiff that you have to make a decision who's suing you? I would throw it out in a heartbeat. And then, with Condieras saying, well, Tom, how can you be a developer because you're not developing anything? But guess what? You have lawsuits against him, so he can't get permits to develop.
That was the most baffling thing about that advertisement is that he said, stop talking and start building when he's suing he's not suing him, but he's backing a lawsuit. He even if he wasn't part of it, he knows there's a lawsuit.
Right.
He can't build until that thing is done, although I'm sure they're doing all the back end stuff that they need to get ready to build.
Right.
And get that project up. Do you think that Margaritaville will be built in the next 5 years here on Fort Myers Beach?
Yes.
And what do you think that would do or mean to this beach?
I think it would. Well, obviously, it's going to clean up the downtown area. I mean, there's so many buildings that need to be cleaned up. I think it'll change it. Maybe change the demographics a little bit. I think to a better demographic. The thing with his off-island low-income housing.
Yeah, it's great.
What a great concept.
Great.
That you're going to give 75 cents an hour to somebody that works there against your rent.
Have you ever seen somebody act as a human punching bag like Torgerson has and still stick around in the town and not flip them the middle finger and say, you guys have to be kidding me? I've been trying to, and maybe I'm exaggerating, but my perception is he's been bending over backwards to make things work. He lives in the community. He's not, it's not like he's some crazy developer from New York City or some, big city where he's trying to just dump a ugly building on us. He seems like from the council meetings that I watched, he's been receptive to even Tracy and Dennis, who voted in favor before they went off drinking at the Whale and decided that they were going to badmouth everybody. I know that was kind of like an editorial. It wasn't really a question, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
I do. And I saw Tom last week, and I was talking to him and just said, how's it going? He said, this is the first project that I've done in my lifetime that I don't know if I will be alive when it's done.
Yeah.
But he has, numerous hotels up in Minnesota. He has 4 under construction right now. He's renovating one of his hotels that he has in Naples right now. So obviously he's busy, but I think this is a real dear project to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hurtful from what's been said about him. And I think truly that he has this town's best interest at heart, and it's not here somebody to just rip everybody off. Or
right.
I think he really cares about this community.
Well, how can you not? I mean, he's part of the community. You see him out at events. You see him participating in things. And do you think that when March rolls around, we're going to have the right council here on the beach where things are going to get kind of straightened out? Do you think
I do.
You do?
I do.
You think we're going to have what's your prediction on who will win this election?
Rexhan and Ray Murphy.
Now, is it wise to reelect somebody that's been on the board before? Maybe get some new blood in there. Is always, we have a president who has zero experience and things to be. Well, I guess we're not going to talk about that, right? I mean,
I will, but no. Okay, let me. Here's my feeling on this. As far as experience and no experience, I've always felt like you should be on the LPA before you get elected to council, that you're even eligible to it. So you have some knowledge of what's going on.
And for those that don't know, LPA means what?
Local planning agency. So we're the ones that make recommendations. We have no official capacity other than making recommendations to the council. And here's my frustration, and you take it on a national level, you can take it on the local level, that I may have worked 2 or 3 years to get something passed,
mm-hmm.
and the next council can walk in and just change it. So it's sort of like, why do you put all your effort and energy into doing something that you think is best for the town when the next group will come in and just say, forget it. So going back to your question, I mean, Rexanne and I butted heads, but we respected each other.
Right.
You know, I don't know Ray that well, but I think you have to walk in with some experience because, you know, with these new people that got in this last election, then they wanted to revisit stormwater fees. Okay. Well, we worked really hard on that, and I can tell you every 5/8, 3/8, quarter-inch fitting and how much is in. And yeah, we had to put a little extra on your water bill. Estero Boulevard is being delayed because they had to revisit that, all the work that we did, and then with Governor Scott cutting the DEP and EPA, now all of a sudden it took longer to get permits for the outflows to the side streets.
Okay.
So that's really delayed the project because now you're second guessing what your prior council did.
Gotcha. So what is your opinion on how the town manager is doing?
Other than the change from ambassador to enforcement, I have no other opinion.
I'm not sure I follow what that means.
No.
Good or bad? Is he doing a good job, bad job, okay job?
Okay.
Okay. Was it the right decision to incorporate the beach for it to become its own little town?
Yes.
Do you feel that some people on the council think this should be their own little fiefdom to keep this is my little backyard?
I think that some of the thought is too narrow.
By who?
Some on the council.
But specifically? Hey, gotta ask, man. You gotta ask. I've been told that you're going to lay it on the line, so why not ask?
I would say that the latest ones that were elected.
Okay, wait. Okay, that would be Tracy Gore and Dennis Boback. And
That's correct.
Is that it? Yeah. Is Anita the best ever or what?
Anita's great.
Yeah. Awesome. So
and Joanne, you know, she probably knows
Yeah.
more about the local
Yeah,
planning
she's great.
agency and
She's great.
the land development code.
Yeah.
I mean, she knows more about the land development code than anybody up there.
Yeah.
Including the staff.
Very detailed. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So anything else you want to talk about that we left out as far as the council goes? And are you going to run again?
No.
Never.
No.
Why not?
I've out of 10 years, I've done 7 years of public service.
Okay, so you were on the
At my 10.
you were on the LPA before you were elected?
Marine Resources Task Force.
Gotcha.
And then the council. And no, I think it's time for somebody else to step up. I mean, 7 out of 10 years since I've been here it's a lot of commitment.
So do you are you guys right on the bay over at the Mango Street Inn?
Are we what?
Right on the bay?
No, we're not.
Yeah. What's the major attraction at the Mango Street Inn besides the glowing personality of your wife?
Hospitality.
Like do you take the residents from the guests from the Mango Street Inn out to breakfast every Saturday like you did? And are you paying their tab today?
Yes.
Wow, that's freaking awesome.
Normally we do breakfast 6 days a week.
Right at the.
I'm a former chef. My wife is a sommelier. So
a what?
Sommelier. So she's a wine educator.
Oh.
So
I don't even know. I'm sure my wife knows what that word is, but I've never.
So in the afternoons, and we have some little wine tasting.
Nice.
I do breakfast 6 days a week. I was a former chef.
Wow.
So this was a treat actually for me that I didn't have to cook breakfast this morning.
So when I go to the Mango Street Inn, are you sitting at the front desk, like checking me in?
No.
You're in the back cooking food.
Yes. No, it's very casual. These guests started with us 10 years ago when we opened.
Nice.
And they started at 2 weeks and then 3 weeks and now they're 4 weeks and now 5 weeks. These guys have been coming back every year.
That's great.
It is. I mean,
nice. Where are they from?
Ohio.
We just drove down.
All right, Chicago.
We got Ohio. We got
20 below.
Wisconsin.
Michigan, of course.
What about Squeak? Minnesota.
Nice.
Minnesota. Jim and Jane, Minnesota.
Wow. Oh, so you guys are all getting out of the cold right now. How about 80 degrees today, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So we got a good stretch of weather coming up, and yeah,
very nice.
And they have become our family. So.
Well, listen, we appreciate you coming on. I was like twisting. I had to twist your arm a couple of times. I know you're busy down there usually.
Well, I wasn't.
Working.
I wasn't sure. Somebody said, "Well, what are you going to talk about?" And I said, "I have no idea. All you said was let's just kick some ass."
That's right. I said, "Bring your A game." That's what I said.
And I said, "I'm ready to rumble." And,
all right. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it, and hopefully we can get down to your place someday and do a show with all your guests, like a little round table thing, and talk about the Mango Street Inn.
Anytime, or let's just talk about whatever you want.
Yeah. All right, everybody. How about a big hand for Dan? Thanks a lot, Dan. Thanks for coming on. Wow. I'm pretty sure that's a record crowd here, Dan. I mean, well, you're buying them breakfast. They better applaud for you. That was super nice. Very nice. Dan, Andre,
you guys
and his
had
wife.
quite a little talk there.
His wife was feeding him questions and answers in the background. I don't know if you saw that. Man, he was awesome. Dan was on the council for a couple of years.
Wow.
And, I love it when people come on and they don't hold back, man. You're a politician, but you don't talk like a politician. You put it all out there. So that was very cool. Very cool.
Good. I'm sure you enjoyed
What were you
that.
doing in the meantime? You're in there talking to some
to
Jim and Judy.
Yes,
Yeah, they're looking
yes,
great.
so
They're
happy
down
to
from,
see
where do
them
they
back.
live? Where do they live?
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Awesome. It's good to see them. They didn't come down last year. They're Soul Birds from Michigan. They didn't come down last year. But it's great to see them. And so there are a couple of things that we need to go back and recap, dear, because we had a glorious week. I mean, any week with you is glorious, but this week was even more glorious than usual. And last weekend when we were hanging out in the back, we almost went live last weekend. We were going to do a show last week. I'm glad we didn't, because sometimes, the rum is talking and probably
that's why I'm telling you no.
First thing I have to ask you is, give me a prediction on the game. Who's going to win and what's going to be the score? I'm going to write it down.
Well, I don't.
First question is, do you know who's playing in the game?
Yes.
Okay.
The Patriots are playing, and the Los Angeles Chargers.
The Los Angeles Chargers are in the Super Bowl. Yeah, they're playing the Patriots, right? Who's going to win?
I hate to say it, but I think the Patriots are going to win.
What's the score going to be?
I think
against the Chargers.
I know. I'm going to say it's going to be 28-14.
28 Patriots, 14 Chargers.
Yeah.
Do you know what a Grand Marnier is? I think that's what Dan said it was. Yeah, it's a kind of a wine tester thing, dear.
That's so much.
That's a wine tester thing. I mean, don't you know anything?
It's not with a G. It's with an S.
She's a wine taster thing, a wine server thing. It's a Grand Marnier thing. It's a Grand Marnier thing. She grabs onto you and gives you some Marnier. That's what Dan's wife does down at the Mango Street Inn. So they have a chef and a Grand Marnier down at the Mango Street Inn.
Okay. We're just going to let that go.
All right. So last weekend, you decided at some point that you were either going to quit your job or you were going to what is this? All of a sudden you were talking about a gap year. You and the dog were going to go on some gap year thing. So what does that mean?
A gap year is traditionally what students who take a year off between high school and before they go to college. And
okay, so you're so far past high school.
Let me finish. They typically backpack through Europe. But I didn't do that. I went straight from high school to college. So now I feel like I've worked a long time. Jilly is through high school. She's doing her thing. That now would be time for me to take a gap year or, a gap summer. I do have the summers off.
And what are you going to do if you do a gap thing?
I'm going to do a road trip. Go see the country with the dog. I'm going to take Katie with me.
Because Nissan Altima you're driving around?
Yep.
Oh, yep. That's going to be fun and exciting.
I'm going to see if Nissan will sponsor me for
come on,
100,000-mile
I can't even get you to call on a business down on Fort Myers Beach to sell our show, and you're going to think, and you're going to call on Nissan. And you think Nissan's going to sponsor you to drive around the country.
It's worth a shot.
All righty. So, folks, before the show started today, we have to tell you a story.
Oh, boy.
Dr. Bill, who was on first, if you joined us late, Dr. Bill from FGCU, who is Mr. Wetlands. I mean,
yes,
he is Mr. Wetlands. Well, he doesn't come to the beach a lot. So many of you know that this used to be a road. It used to be a road.
Yes.
And so he called me when he was at least 5 miles away from the beach. And he said, okay, when I get there, where do I park? So I said, Doc, when you come to the beach, you come over the bridge and you veer to the right. You'll see the parking lot on the left.
I think he inverted those two because he turned left.
Well, wait a second now. He didn't turn left.
Well, he veered left.
He did not.
And then he turned right.
Can you let me finish my story, please, just once? So this used to be a road here. So he continued over the bridge and he made a right on this sidewalk.
That's what I'm saying. He veered left at the bottom of the bridge.
It's kind of like
and then
going
went
straight.
Right.
It's kind of like going straight.
Listen, he just got the directions
Okay,
wrong,
so
and the pylons weren't up.
So that was the other thing. The cleaning people from this morning forgot to put the pylons back in, which blocks vehicles. He made the right-hand turn, and he parked at the Sunglass Hut.
Yep.
And I was fixing the equipment. She starts yelling at me, hey, and I'm like, what? There's a car over there. Okay,
There's a
well,
car.
what do I have to do with the car? Well, it's your guest for the show. And I was like, how do you know it's my guest for the show?
And what did I say?
It's 100 million cars on the road.
And what was it?
I don't know. How did you know?
My astute observation was because his license plate said wetlands.
There you go.
There you go.
So
and
I go running
a
over
really
there,
nice
and
car.
he's totally baffled and flabbergasted that he pulled up on the sidewalk. And I said, Doc, I told you veered to the right and make a left. He goes, I was following my GPS.
There you
so
go.
there you go.
Well,
was interesting.
sometimes you're not so good with the directions
Here we go.
either.
It's always got to come back to me. You always got to blame the directions on me.
You have a hard time with the east-west thing.
That was a great way to kick off the show, though.
That was something.
A lot of stuff going on, dear. A lot of serious stuff on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
The politics is serious, yes. The election is big. On February 11th, we're going to have a forum at the Beach Baptist.
We aren't.
Well, we're moderating the forum.
Okay, but we're not hosting it.
And we're going to have the candidates there. From what I understand, Dan, Rexanne, and Ray are going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard any confirmation from Dennis. And you had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Bobarino, didn't you?
I didn't
come
really
on.
meet him. I was just standing there.
Where were you?
I went to there's a women's countess group that gets together, and we were down at Junkanoo.
Countess
and
group?
Yes.
What does that mean? Like you all dress
can
up
I
like
finish
countesses?
my story?
My apologies, dear.
So there was a bunch of us together, and we were talking, sharing stories. And Anita Saracita was there,
Yes.
and Jackie was there from the chamber, a bunch of people.
Look at you hanging out with all the highfalutin ladies
thank
on.
Mary Torgeson, because she organizes it. I'm sure I left somebody out. Anyways, but we're at Junkanoo, so I mean anybody can be there.
And everybody knows that's where he hangs out.
I don't know
Well, that's
any
what
of
I
it.
hear. That's where he
I
hangs
didn't
out.
know who it was until she
What do you mean
said.
you didn't know who he was? How many
I
times have you
didn't.
looked at that picture from the whale? Whale-gate.
Whatever. So he was there, but I didn't get to say hello.
Somebody tried to introduce you to him, though, right?
No, I just was standing there, and I figured that once I knew who it was,
See, this is what you need
might
to
not
do.
be a great.
You should just go up to him and say, hey, Mr. Bobarino, can I buy you a drink?
I'm not going to use derogatory terms, and
I say it in fun.
I
We
don't.
kid because we care. We care about Dennis. We want him to go on his merry way, become a fisherman, and do other things.
Okay.
He served his time.
Are you done, Jeff?
Go
So
Carry
I
on.
didn't. Once I knew who it was, I would have gone up and just asked if he was considering, coming on for the debate.
You would not. You would.
I would,
You don't have the
because
cojones to do that.
You don't need any cojones
Yes.
to ask somebody if they're going to participate. I would say, too, that the debate is about the issues on the island. It's not about your jocularity or your jesting that's going on now. It's a serious debate. We're just going to be moderating. It's to go over the political views and the issues. It's not to poke fun at him. And so I hope that he will participate so that everybody is represented and everybody can hear what the candidates have to say.
We don't want him to win.
We don't have a vote, and no one cares what you want.
I think there are a lot of people out there that care.
No,
You're probably right.
especially since you can't vote.
I can offer my opinion.
Well, you've certainly done that
But
in
I won't.
excess.
Well, I'm not going to offer my opinion at the candidates night forum.
No.
It's going to be totally serious.
If you do, you're getting a shoe right to the forehead.
Like George Bush got in Iraq.
Mhm.
Nice. That's a sign of respect.
Well,
Or
here,
was it-
let
was
me
it
show you some
disrespect?
respect.
Or was it disrespect? Oh, so there's the February 11th
Correct.
candidates night forum. It's not really a debate. It's a forum where the residents should come out in mass. So that's the first thing. Now, Monday is another big day. This
Right.
Monday, the council's meeting at Town Hall, and the sheriff is going to be there. And the sheriff is going to talk about, from what I understand, public safety, and that's been a big issue on the beach.
Yes.
Now, I came down to the beach on Wednesday, and I saw I went to the library to see Mitch and see everybody down there to see how they were doing. And I noticed that there was a sheriff's deputy sitting in the library. And now there's a deputy on duty in the library every day. I don't know how long that's going to go on. And, you kind of think, well, isn't it a little late for that? But, you know what it was? The people that were there, they kind of felt like they felt better. They felt,
well, yeah,
like their place of work had been violated. So they felt better. I did get to see the puzzles, by the way. The puzzles on the ceiling, which are really cool.
Was it amazing? Yeah.
It is amazing. You should get to the library someday, dear. They have lots of books there.
Well,
lots of books.
Well, you love books.
I do.
Did you take one out?
No,
Did you get a library card?
I read on the Kindle now. Can I get a library card here? I'm not a resident of the beach.
I don't know. I know they're not part of the Lee County library system, so maybe they could make an exception for you.
Yeah, you never know. So that'll be Monday, so we'll be covering the council meeting. And then we also have been doing a special series on the homeless. And, you never know what the numbers are, or you're allowed to call them homeless, or you're not. I mean, you risk offending people and saying the wrong things. But anyway, it was a great interview that I had with Pastor Sean from the Beach Baptist. He laid it out on the line, man. He said if there are people in need and they don't have a place to live and he has an opportunity to feed them, he's going to feed them. I mean, what is the alternative to that? The alternative is, let's say the churches stop feeding the homeless. What's going to happen? Well, they're going to break into somebody's business, or you're going to see them dumpster diving.
I don't know about that. But the issue
they have to eat.
The issue that he brought up too was that the church feeds a lot of people who maybe aren't necessarily homeless, that the true homeless accounts for a small percentage of the people that they serve. And they're going to continue to serve everybody because there are people that need that little bit to bridge the gap. So
that's right. Yes, the sheriff, that's right. The only reason I say sheriff is because I'm afraid if I try and say his name, I'm gonna mess up his name. But Sheriff Carmine's going to be, that's right. He's the first speaker at the council meeting on Monday at 9:00. So if you're going to the council meeting, folks, get there early because that chambers is going to be packed on Monday. So get there early. So this week I'm going to interview the pastor from God's Table, and that'll be posted either Friday at 9 or before that. You got kind of an edge to you today, dear. Why you didn't get your exercise in this morning. I know that.
I didn't, but you've talked over me quite a bit this time.
I did?
Yes.
I thought we were kind of doing a good job going back and forth. I
think when we go to edit it, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Please don't.
But you're kind of edgy today. I like when you get edgy. It's kind of nice.
All right. Is it time?
We're actually, it's overtime.
Okay.
So.
Well, you yelled at me for cutting you off.
I know. Last week you were, wow.
I'll just let you go and go and go.
You really cut me off.
Yes. Oh, well. Wait till you see what happens after we go off the air.
So anyway, we'll see you guys again next Saturday at 10:00 or not 9:00 till 10:00. We have the guests lined up for next Saturday. We have Carla Pines coming on. She's going to talk about a special event that she's hosting.
Okay.
It has to do with painting. And there's going to be a Grand Marnier there, I think. Just kidding. And we have a couple other guests. I can't remember who they are right now. So we'll see you during the week. Remember to check out our Facebook page. Make a donation if you want to. Go support us or not. We have hats. We have this is the part where we sell
mugs
things.
And shirts.
Mugs and shirts and mouse pads and a bunch of other stuff I wasted money on. So if you want to spend a couple bucks or not, or check out our Facebook page. Whenever news comes up, we're going to post it on. I forgot to tell you something. I have to say this before the show ends.
Hurry up.
We did put an end to Leon's appearances on the show. I don't know if you guys saw the video of him when he was at the council. All right. I know you're going to rub it in now, right? You're going to rub it in because you weren't a big fan. And I thought he was entertaining until what he said council meeting. So he's persona non grata.
Yep. Just going to let it go.
No, you don't.
No,
this is our show. We can say whatever we want.
To be fair, I think his views do not represent our views, and it just got to be too much. And you meet people, and then you make a determination too quick. You don't thoroughly vet people, and not everybody that you meet right off the bat. It frequently we have issues with people that you meet and don't.
That's why we're such a good match, dear. It's like we balance each other.
Well, there you go.
And the other thing I wanted to mention was about Salty Morton, my new friend Salty Morton. Some of you that have been following us for a while saw that Mr. Morton, who used to work for I think it was the Beach Observer. You know, the Observer thing has like many different newspapers. They have the Beach paper and a Cape Coral paper.
Okay, so what did he do?
Anyway, you're rushing me along. So he posted something that was somewhat negative of the show. But then this week he sent over an article that kind of helped us out with the homeless story, and he was very nice.
Nice.
Yeah, and so we're kind of buds now.
Well, I don't know.
So if you ever get sick or anything or fall off a bike,
here we go again.
I got a co-host.
All right.
Mr. Salt, and he called himself Salty Morton when he sent the note, which I thought was cool. He did.
Well,
So when Dennis sits in the chair, he's going to say, "Hi, I'm Dennis Bobarino."
He's not going to sit in this chair next to you.
All right, everybody.
But if
thank
he wants to sit in the chair and I interview him, I will show respect.
Lastly, the good news for the show is we've
Florida
been picked up
Podcast
by the
Network.
Florida Podcast Network, which means real soon we're going to be heard all over the state. I don't know why.
To throngs
Anybody
of people
would
who
want to hear
do not
this
care.
gibberish, but soon we're going to be nationwide, baby.
All right. Thank you, folks.
See y'all. Thanks for listening. Dancing it out. Thank you. Oh, we have a studio audience today.
And we're trying to
The mouse
Yep.
isn't working.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next episode right here. Bye-bye.